Hello. Uh, your brain is telling you stories, and sometimes those stories are not helpful. So, my name is Shamash. I'm author of Mindfulness for Dummies. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a story that my mind was telling me that wasn't helpful, and how your mind may be doing the same thing, and how mindfulness can help you to step out of that. So, one moment in my life that comes to mind was when I was transitioning from being a pretty much full time school teacher to being a full time mindfulness teacher. And when I was a full time school teacher, I was paying my mortgage, I was getting paid regularly on a monthly basis. I understood how everything was working. I had my classes, everything was organized and simple, and I could manage it. And at the same time, there was this opportunity to do something new, to, publish this book on mindfulness and to quit my school teaching and being a full time mindfulness teacher. And my mind was telling me stories, and it was telling me stories about how I couldn't do it, or I couldn't make the transition, how I wouldn't make enough money, how it'd be too risky, how nobody else had quit this school, so why would I? Why should I do that? How I'll be missing out on all the vacation and the holidays. And so my mind was constantly telling me stories. And the way I managed to get out of it and actually make that leap was actually on the very, very last day. And I had the resignation letter in my pocket. I was thinking, shall I hand it in or not? This is the last chance on the last day. And fortunately, it was a teacher training day, and we were learning about coaching and the importance of coaching. And in the training, we were learning about setting goals, about the future, and thinking about what your ideal is and what your values are, and learning to take steps to do that. And so I thought, okay, this must be a sign. I'm going to take the step and hand the resignation letter in and just put it on the head teacher's desk. And that was it. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, actually. But that was lucky. That was close. And my brain could have hijacked me with the stories that it was telling me, and I could have got into lots of problems. So your brain is always telling you stories. And I'm going to show you a image. Let's see if this comes up. Of how the brain is telling you stories. So I think you can see that. Yeah. So when the brain is telling you stories, it affects different parts of the brain. And there's 4 things here that they show. First of all, it does a thing called neural coupling. So, the brain is made out of neurons. And it says here, story activates parts of the brain that allows the listener to turn the story into their own ideas and experience, thanks to a thing called neural coupling. And I think that's linked to this mirroring as well. So essentially, when someone is telling you a story, like today I was telling you a story, the more vividly I tell the story, the more you'd experience the story as if it's happening to you. So the kind of patterns that are kind of being triggered in my brain would be getting triggered in your brain. Okay. The thing in the top right hand corner, dopamine, that's really interesting. So that's called like the pleasure hormone or the reward hormone. And like when you get a text message or something like that, the dopamine gets released. It's almost like an addiction that can form from it, but it's telling you that something positive is happening. And in this image, it says the brain released dopamine into your system when it experiences an emotionally charged event, making it easier for you to remember it with greater accuracy. So if your brain is telling you stories, there's an emotional content to it quite often, and that'll make it easier for you to remember that story, whether you're telling yourself or someone else is telling you that story. And finally, the cortex activity. So when processing facts, 2 areas of the brain are activated. A well-told story can engage many additional areas. So I would say, yeah, storytelling is really good, and storytelling is something that it's kind of the way our brain works. If you look at the most popular TED Talks of all time, you'll see that for many of them, they have the format of telling a story. And quite often it's a story that goes on a thing called the hero's journey. So something happens and then something goes wrong, and they manage to overcome that challenge and go through successfully to an outcome. But interesting research on mindfulness found that there's actually 2 different networks that can get activated. So you can have the storytelling brain, when your mind is telling you stories all the time about who you are and what you're going to do today and what you're going to be getting up to and what happened yesterday. So that story. And then on the other side is a network of the brain that's activated when you're mindful, when you're in the present moment. And that's activating your senses, so the sensory part of your brain. So to be in the present moment, in the here and now. And the more mindful people are, the more they practice mindfulness, the more they can distinguish, is their brain telling them stories or are they in the here and now? Now, if you haven't done any mindfulness before, and you don't know what it means to be in the present moment, and you don't appreciate the importance of it, then your mind is just going along telling you stories all the time, thoughts, 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 and you believe the thoughts to be facts, even though it's just a story. Like, when you go to the cinema and you watch a movie, there's all these different things happening and you can laugh and you can cry and all that, but in the back of your head that it's just a story and you'll be able to walk out of that cinema. Whereas in your mind, if you don't appreciate that it's almost like a mini cinema going on and there's a story being told, you think it's absolutely true. You think something's going to go absolutely wrong, or you've done something that's very terrible, and you think of it as a fact rather than just a story. So the more you do mindful practice and the more you start to be able to separate the two, the storytelling brain, which can be telling you stories which are also often not that positive, because if your mind is trying to protect you, so it's focusing on stories that are not so great quite often. And so you can see, it's just a story. And the way to get out of it is to come into the present moment. It's almost like a freedom, because of if you get into your storytelling brain and you start thinking and noticing and believing that to be true, and if those thoughts are to the negative, you'd think that, okay, I need to tell myself positive stories. But unfortunately, although it makes logical sense, they found it just doesn't work. If I tell you to stop thinking about flying pink microphones like this one, imagine that was pink and that was flying around, the harder you try to stop thinking about that, the more you'll think about it. It's the same with negative thinking. If you have a negative thought and you think, okay, I'm going to think positive, I must get rid of that negative thought, the very fact that you're trying to get rid of it gives it an attention unconsciously. And so the way out of this almost trap is to come into the present moment. When you come into the present moment, you don't have to have negative thoughts or positive thoughts. You can just step out the whole thoughts thing altogether. You can come into the here and now. Simple as feeling your breathing, feeling your feet on the floor, noticing sounds, listening to different types of music. You're coming into the present moment and you're stepping out of that whole network of thought. And whether they're positive or negative, it doesn't matter so much. And obviously you're going to go back and forth, but you've got a bit of freedom there. You've got a bit of choice. So people don't often talk about the fact that our brains are storytelling machines almost. And the problem with that, if we want to take things a bit further, why not, even though it's quite early in the morning, the storytelling brain is telling you the story of who you are, and it's kind of making it up. So when you were born, you're a baby, and up to age 1.5 or 2, you're kind of connected to the present moment, and you're also connected to your surroundings. There's a sense of oneness. But when you get to a certain age, you suddenly realize, or you start telling yourself the story that I am this physical person and this is the rest of the universe, and there's this separation between me and others. And that's where you get the terrible twos, where children at age 2, they start getting very frustrated and angry. I want this, I don't want that. It's because they've created the initial separation. In a way, the ego is born and the storytelling brain is beginning, and they're constantly telling themselves the story of who they are and what they want to get and how good they are or how bad they are. And they're telling themselves this story about them and their relationship with the world around them. What we're starting to do with mindfulness, what I'm interested in, what hopefully you're interested in, is to realize that this is actually just a story. The ultimate reality is there is just oneness. There is no separation. We need this separation to be able to operate in the world, but it's not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is there's no difference between me and my surroundings. All there is oneness all the time. I don't experience it all the time, obviously, otherwise I won't be able to function. But the underlying reality is that is the absolute truth. And being mindful, being present, taking some time to do meditation, being in nature, just turning off, switching away from all the storytelling and thinking from time to time, it's very helpful, because if you're taking a break from that. The other great thing is that then you've got a choice. You can notice when the storytelling is happening, hopefully from time to time, and notice when it's just a story, and you can go back to being present. So if someone says something frustrating or annoying, or something goes wrong in your life, you know that on one level, yeah, it's frustrating and annoying, but you know on another level, it's just a story. It's just another story that's going through their head or your head. And on an ultimate reality level, all there is oneness anyway. So that's some of the insights I wanted to share with you today. So storytelling is really, really important. Understanding that our minds tell us stories, understanding why when other people share stories, it's so interesting because if that's the way our kind of that part of our brain works, but also knowing that it's just a story, just like they say in mindfulness, thoughts are just thoughts, not necessarily facts. I've got thought of a new one today, which is stories are just stories, not necessarily facts too. And although we think of our lives as very real and all the things we have to do and places we need to go, on another level, it's just a story. And so we don't have to take it too seriously or worry about it too much because stories come and go. Okay, that's all I wanted to share today. I've seen someone sharing here that I use storytelling during happening therapy. After removing part of a traumatic event, I override the remaining trauma with a positive outcome therapy. So it works 100%. A nice question here, which is the problem is how do you prove the oneness to people who are totally unconscious and live in a duality reality? That's a great question. And I think everyone comes up to it in their own time. So we cannot force these things. You can take, what's that quote? You can take a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink it. So in the same way, people come up to this and this insight in their own time. Quite often people have to go through difficulties and challenges and things go wrong in their life and goes so wrong that they think, hang on a minute, I need to think of my life in a different way. What's going on? Why is there so much suffering here? And so then they may turn to different books or audio or teachers, or there may be just some insight that pops into their head. But everyone comes up to it in their own time, I would say. And Kate adds that it allows you to sit and choose how to act instead of reacting. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, thank you. Cool. So thank you very much for sharing. I really appreciate the comments. It makes it more like an interesting conversation as well. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are. It looks like it's going to be a nice sunny day today in UK. So I'm going to try and go for a walk or something. Wish you a great day and I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30 UK time. Bye for now.